Good morning. Welcome to another edition of Take 5. We are in Exodus chapter 20. And these are the first words I've spoken today. And it's probably why my voice is kind of dark. But anyway, we've just finished with the Ten Commandments. So the people are watching what's going on. And here's what happens in verse 18. When the people saw the thunder and lightning and heard the trumpet and saw the mountain in smoke, they trembled with fear. They stayed at a distance and said to Moses, "Speak to us yourself, and we will listen, but do not have God speak to us, or we will die." And they were afraid of God, and that's not a bad thing because God's very powerful. And when they saw that going on, and remember, God even told Moses to tell the people to stay away. So the people were afraid to actually talk to God. They were okay with talking to Moses. But it's a fearful thing to approach God this way unless you've got somebody going to bat for you. Thankfully, we've got Jesus who bridges the gap between us and God. But they didn't have that. So they said, "We'll talk to you, Moses." Moses said to the people, verse 20, "Do not be afraid." I'm going to tell you something. That is the most common command in the Bible, is do not be afraid. I think it's one of the easiest things for us is in so many things in life is to be afraid. But the Bible tells us not to be afraid. And in this case, he tells them why they shouldn't be afraid. God has come to test you so that the fear of God will be with you to keep you from sinning. Now, it's interesting. He says, don't be afraid. And then he says, God's come to give you fear. So obviously what he means here is you don't need to be afraid for nothing, but you need to fear God. And it says in Proverbs that the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. So there is an appropriate fear, and we've talked about this before, just as a child fears a parent. But it shouldn't be that oh no, what's going to happen? It should be, okay, I understand God's in control, and I need to obey him if I want to be on his side. But we don't need to be trembling and, oh my God, but we do need to fear a powerful God and what he can do to us. And we need to obey him. Verse 21, the people remained at a distance. Let's back up to 20. And it says the reason that he wants them to fear God is to keep them from sinning. And that's the reason we need to fear God, so we don't sin. Now, verse 21, the people remained at a distance while Moses approached the thick darkness where God was. So it was just Moses, and God said that. Remember, he said, I'm only going to talk to you this way, Moses. Verse 22, then the Lord said to Moses, tell the Israelites this, you have seen for yourselves that I have spoken to you from heaven. Do not make any gods to be alongside me. Do not make for yourselves gods of silver or gods of gold. He said, look, I proved it. I proved it. I talked to you. I'm the real deal. Don't be trying to make other things. Okay? We're going to keep reading. Now, you're not going to get it today, but you're going to see that they don't obey that command. Verse 24, make an altar of earth. An altar is just something that they would make where they would offer sacrifices to God. And that was part of their worship at that time. Make an altar of earth for me and sacrifice on it your burnt offerings and fellowship offerings. And these would be animals usually. It could be vegetable offerings, but usually it was animals, sheep, cows, doves, different things like that. And there's all kinds of details on that in the book of Leviticus. Okay, well, yeah, he tells you what it is, your sheep and goats and your cattle. Whenever I cause my name to be honored, I will come to you and bless you. If you make an altar of stones for me, do not build it with dressed stones, for you will defile it if you use a tool on it. Now, he tells them to make it out of earth, dirt. He said, but if you're going to use stones, you can't use dressed stones. Dressed stones would be something they've used a tool on to get it shaped a certain way. Otherwise, you got to just go find natural stones. All right. And then something just for practicality here, he says in verse 26, and do not go up to my altar on steps, or your private parts may be exposed. And you got to remember what they wore back there was kind of like dresses. I mean, even the men wore them. So And if you're going upstairs and you got a dress on, somebody can look up there. That's what he's talking about. Don't go up there on, figure out a different way to make this altar than that, is what he's telling them. That's just practical things. The main thing is we want to fear God. We don't want to be afraid. And he's our only God. We don't want any idols. All right. We're going to be in a new chapter tomorrow, 21. So come back for the next edition of Take 5.